Right now at Tesco, there are at least 5 types of meat that look very 100% British, high welfare, club card price. But if you read through their recall history and the related health warnings, there's a good chance you'll want to put them straight back on the shelf. The problem is that on that little foam tray, Tesco only shows you the opposite. Certification logos, the words quality, lean mince, outdoor bread. Everything looks incredibly safe for your family. This video will break down why you should avoid these 5 types of meat at Tesco at all costs, and more importantly, which options are actually safer that you can still buy in the very same supermarket. Those will also be covered at the end of the video. And now we're going to start with the one that seems the most harmless at breakfast, but can turn into a long-term nightmare for your heart. 5. Tesco's budget. Pork sausages. You spot them in seconds. A big plastic tray of Tesco pork sausages, 12 in a pack, yellow sticker on top, club card price screaming, bargain. In 2 or 3 seconds, your brain says, real meat, proper meal, problem solved. Now slow that scene down and actually look at what you're paying for. Flip the pack over, find the tiny nutrition box that no one has time to read at 8 p.m. and do the maths. 2 sausages, not the whole tray, just 2, give you roughly 40% of an adult's recommended saturated fat for the day and about 1/4 of the daily salt limit, before the beans, the toast, the butter, the lunch, the snacks. NHS guidance, the British Heart Foundation, groups like Action on Salt have all warned for years that processed meats such as sausages are some of the biggest salt bombs in the British diet, and that a salty, high-fat pattern is associated with raised blood pressure, strokes, and heart disease over time. Legally, the pack ticks the boxes. The numbers are there. But when you imagine that plate on your table 3-4 mornings a week, it stops feeling like value and starts feeling like a very slow, very profitable health experiment. What makes it worse is how neatly this product slots into a broken system. In a cost of living crisis, budget sausages are not a naughty weekend fry-up. For a lot of families, they are default protein. You don't choose them because they're nutritionally amazing. You choose them because your rent went up, your energy bill doubled, and the till has the final word. The supermarket knows that. The multi-buy deals, the 2 for X meat offers, the friendly phrases like family favorite and great for kids' tea are not accidents. On paper, they are just marketing. In reality, they lean on your love for your kids, your fear of not feeding everyone, and quietly attach that emotion to one of the saltiest, fattiest options in the fridge. After a while, it's hard not to feel angry. Angry that you have to dig through tiny print to discover what public health campaigns have been shouting about for a decade. Angry that regulators can pat themselves on the back because the label is technically compliant, while knowing full well most people are shopping on autopilot after a 10-hour shift. Angry that a government that claims to care about heart disease still allows the cheapest, most heavily promoted protein on the shelf to be exactly the kind of food heart charities tell you to eat less of. It starts to feel less like personal responsibility and more like being set up to fail. Meanwhile, the damage doesn't show up as a dramatic food poisoning headline. It shows up slowly as tighter belts and higher blood pressure. Middle-aged men already eating too much salt drift closer to the stroke statistics. Parents trying to keep the food budget under control end up serving plate after plate of heavy, salty, fatty meals, not because they're careless, but because the system punishes them every time They reach for something fresher and leaner. Every yellow sticker breakfast feels like a tiny win at the checkout and a tiny loss for your arteries. The good news is, once you see the pattern, you can start to break it. It doesn't mean never eating a sausage again. It means refusing to let the cheapest, most aggressively promoted option become your daily baseline. Swapping some sausage mornings for eggs, beans, or smaller amounts of less processed meat. Looking at that family pack tray and asking, is this really the only way to feed my family? For me, even if everything on that label is legal and transparent, it's not something I want on my breakfast table every single day. And the uncomfortable truth is, this is one of the clean examples. No recall, no misprint, just a cheap habit tightening the screw. The next meat on this list. The problem isn't just the salt or the fat, it's hiding right there on the date printed at the top of the pack. 4. Tesco cooked beef slices. On the surface, it looks harmless. A neat little pack of Tesco 10 cooked beef slices, thin brown slices laid out in a row. The front label saying, cooked beef slices, ready to eat, with a serving suggestion in a sandwich or salad. For office workers grabbing lunch or parents packing school boxes, it feels like the safer choice. Cleaner than a greasy takeaway. Tesco quality checked. Something you can open and eat cold without thinking twice. But the moment you bring the use-by date into focus, the whole picture cracks. Tesco had to recall this exact product, 10 cooked beef slices, 125 grit, because the label printed the use-by as 24 January 2025, when the real safe date was 24th of December 2024. That is not a tiny typo. That is an extra month of supposed safety printed on a ready-to-eat meat. This isn't raw beef you're going to cook to death. This is sliced, processed, ready-to-eat beef. The kind of food where if listeria or other bacteria grow near the end of the product's life, you eat them straight off the slice. The Food Standards Agency has said it bluntly for years. Use-by dates are about safety, not flavor. Eat food after the use-by, and you can get food poisoning even if it looks and smells fine. Now add real life on top of that. Most of us do not live in a lab. We live in a cost of living crisis. People stretch food. They cut off a slightly dried edge. They say, it's only one day over. They turn a blind eye to the little voice in their head because throwing away protein feels like burning money. So when a use-by date is printed a whole month too far, that mistake doesn't float in a vacuum. It lands in kitchens where families are already pushing products a day or two past date to stay afloat. Suddenly, each neat, innocent-looking slice becomes a silent coin toss between fine and food poisoning. And what makes this worse is precisely that this is sold as ready to eat. Nobody thinks, I should reheat this to be safe. The whole selling point is, Tesco has cooked it for you. You just have to trust them. That trust is the product. When a basic thing like the date is wrong, it doesn't just make Tesco look sloppy. It makes you wonder how many near misses never make the news. How many times have you eaten something close to the date that you only now realize might have been labeled wrong? If a giant supermarket with entire departments for quality control can't get the most fundamental safety instruction on the pack right, how strong is this famous UK food safety system we're told to be proud of? Longer term, there's another layer. These beef slices aren't just a microbiology risk when dates go wrong. They're also processed red meat. The World Cancer Research Fund and heart charities have been warning that eating a lot of processed meat is associated with a higher risk of bowel cancer and heart disease. So you end up in a twisted situation where the product can quietly raise long-term risk if you eat it often. And then, thanks to one sloppy label, it can also spike short-term food poisoning risk in a single week. And somehow, the message we get from above is still, read the label. The information is there. At some point, it stops feeling like an accident and starts feeling like neglect. Parents who picked up that pack to make simple sandwiches for their kids, then later saw the FSA recall, are left with a cocktail of guilt, anger, and total confusion the next time they stand in front of the chilled meat aisle. Do you trust the dates? Do you buy it anyway and hope? Or do you accept that the system you were told to rely on is full of holes and start looking for safer habits? Less processed meat, more cooking from fresh, checking recalls yourself instead of waiting for anyone official to bother telling you. For me, one wrong number on a label is already enough to turn a quick lunch into a gamble. It's not just about one pack of beef, it's about a chain that tells you ready to eat while outsourcing all the real risk back onto your kitchen. And the uncomfortable part? The next product on this list manages to play with something even more dangerous. On that label, every date is correct. It just forgets to tell people with allergies how life-threatening one hidden ingredient could be. 3. Tesco stir-fry tikka chicken. You see it in the chilled aisle and your brain relaxes. A bright tray of Tesco stir-fry tikka chicken, 650 grams of pre-marinated chicken with a glossy sauce sachet tucked inside, promising perfect for a quick dinner. Just stir-fry and serve. After a long day at work, it feels like the best of both worlds. Home-cooked, but almost as effortless as a takeaway. Tesco has done the hard part, the marinating, the seasoning. You just throw it in the pan and feed the family. Then you find out what was actually in that little sachet. This exact product, Tesco stir-fry tikka chicken, 650 rank, with use by 9 2025, was recalled because the sauce contained egg and mustard that were not declared on the label. For most people, that might sound like a minor admin error. For anyone with an egg or mustard allergy, it is not admin, it is ambulance. NHS allergy guidance is clear. Even a tiny amount of the wrong allergen can trigger a serious reaction. Hives, swelling of the throat, difficulty breathing, full-blown anaphylaxis. This is not one of those eat too much for 20 years and you might raise your risk situations. This is one normal family dinner and you're calling 999. And what makes it worse is that this is exactly the kind of product allergy families try to trust. Multi-component, yes, meat, sauce, sometimes veg, but sold under a big, familiar supermarket name that promises clear labeling. The hidden risk wasn't in some obscure ingredient with a Latin name. It was in the one thing allergy sufferers scan labels for first: egg and mustard, two of the main allergens that by law should be clearly declared. Instead, they were tucked inside a small sachet, the sort of thing most people simply rip open and pour into the pan without ever reading. The front of pack talks about quick stir-fry for the whole family, and in homes where someone is allergic, that slogan lands a lot closer to quick route to A&E. The bitter irony is that people with allergies are usually the ones who read labels the most carefully. They are the shoppers who stand in the aisle scanning every line because they know how little it takes to land in a hospital bed. When a major retailer still manages to forget to list egg and mustard in a sauce, it sends a very clear message. No matter how careful you are, the system can still blindside you. Each new allergen recall chips away at trust, not just in one product, but in the entire wall of chilled meals. You stop seeing convenient dinners. You start seeing a maze of fine print and potential mistakes. At some point, the anger stops being abstract. You imagine a parent who bought that stir-fry specifically because it looked simple and safe. Tesco branded, cooked at home, shared around the table. They did everything they were told to do. Shop at a big chain, check the front of the pack, trust that allergens will be listed, and still ended up playing roulette with their child's airway because someone, somewhere in a supply chain and a sign-off process, didn't bother to update a label. Regulators get to issue a tidy little recall notice and move on. Allergy families are left shaking every time they pick up anything more complex than plain chicken and salt. The only sane response is to change how we shop, not out of paranoia, but out of self-defense. For households with allergies, that often means stepping away from complicated, pre-marinated kits and back towards simple ingredients. Raw chicken, spices you control, sources you can read in full. It means signing up for FSA alerts, double-checking batches, treating family stir-fry packs with suspicion instead of gratitude. Personally, if a brand can forget to mention egg and mustard in its own sauce, I don't see a trusted helper in the kitchen anymore. I see a shortcut that asks me to risk someone's life to save 10 minutes. And as bad as that is, allergies at least come with a warning label on your medical record. The next meat on this list is darker in a different way. It's the kind of product that lets you believe you're doing the right thing for years, while quietly loading a time bomb into your gut. 2. Tesco Wiltshire cured ham. At first glance, it could not look more harmless. A pack of Tesco Wiltshire cured ham, pale pink slices laid out neatly, the label proudly saying, Wiltshire cured, British pork, sometimes with little badges like outdoor bread, and a cozy picture of fields and farmhouses. This is the stuff that ends up in school lunchboxes, office sandwiches, quick snacks. It looks light, tidy, respectable, a cleaner protein than sausages, surely better than salami or pepperoni. Then you find out what makes that ham so pretty. Behind the soft pink color and the clean branding sits nitrite, the curing agent that keeps the meat pink and helps protect against botulism. When independent testing looked at ham across the big UK supermarkets, every single sample contained nitrite. Tesco's Wiltshire ham stood out at the top end, with nitrite levels around the low 30s milligrams per kilo, higher than many of the other hams and bacons in the survey, even if still under the legal UK limit of 155 darmoig. On paper, that sounds fine, within the law, within the limit. But in the background, cancer experts and international agencies have already put processed meats like ham, bacon, and sausages into the same top category of substances linked to bowel cancer risk. That's the category nobody wants to hear about when they're just making a sandwich for their kid. And this is where it gets even more uncomfortable. The people who eat the most of this stuff are not wealthy foodies making charcuterie boards. They are children and ordinary adults with lunchboxes. 1 or 2 slices in a sandwich looks like nothing. But school term after school term, year after year, that nothing quietly becomes a steady drip of processed meat and nitrite, while parents are reassured by words like British, quality, cured with care. The front of the pack talks about animal welfare and local sourcing. The part about nitrite and processed meat and cancer risk is buried in long reports most shoppers will never read. What makes it worse is the way the marketing plays on our instincts. You see British pork and outdoor bread, and your brain files this under healthier choice. Many parents genuinely think they are trading up when they choose a thin, neat ham slice instead of a greasy pepperoni or a fatty sausage roll. In reality, the issue isn't just the visible fat. It's the fact that this is still processed meat cured with chemicals, in the very category health organizations say we should be cutting back on. The welfare and local badges may be true, but they also work like a smokescreen. They make you feel virtuous while you unknowingly put the same class of product on the plate again and again. No one wants to be told that the sandwich their child eats every school day sits in the same scientific risk category as some of the nastiest things we warn about. Of course, the real danger depends on dose, on the rest of the diet, on many factors. But the point is not to terrorize people. It's to ask an honest question. Have we, without realizing, been piling ham onto plates far more often than we would if the label said processed meat, eat sparingly, instead of British outdoor bread? In a cost of living crisis, those thin ham slices are convenient, cheaper than high welfare fresh meat, and incredibly easy to turn into the default. The problem isn't one sandwich, it's 10 years of sandwiches you thought were the better option. At some point, you stop just trusting the green fields on the label and start protecting your own. That might mean downgrading ham from everyday filler to occasional treat, swapping some of those sandwiches for cheese, hummus, eggs, or leftover roast you cooked yourself. It might mean talking honestly about processed meat instead of hiding behind soft focus farm imagery. Personally, once I know that a light pink slice carries this kind of baggage, I don't see a harmless lunch anymore. I see a quiet argument between marketing and medical science playing out in the middle of my child's school day. And if a single slice of ham can drag in a whole debate about cancer, what happens when we go back to the most basic, honest thing of all? A tray of fresh meat on yellow sticker, straight from the Tesco shelf to the chopping board, carrying more bacteria than any label picture will ever show. 1. Tesco fresh chicken and mince. It's 9 o'clock at night and the meat aisle is almost empty. The full-price packs are mostly gone, but right at the end of the shelf, there they are. A few trays of chicken drumsticks, chicken thighs, a block of beef mince 20% fat. A member of staff has just walked away after sticking on the yellow labels, slashing the price from £3 or £4 to something under £1. In a heartbeat, you scoop them up. 100% British chicken, fresh, suitable for freezing, farm assured, traceable. It feels like you've just outsmarted the system. But the one thing that never gets a yellow sticker is the bacteria. Campylobacter is still the leading cause of food poisoning in the UK, and most of it is linked to raw chicken. The uncomfortable truth is that almost all raw poultry carries some level of Campylobacter on it. The only thing between that bug and your gut is how the meat is stored, handled, and cooked. Beef mince, especially the cheap 20% fat bricks, is another perfect playground. A lot of surface area, plenty of moisture and fat, and if the pack sits out of the fridge too long or drifts past its use by, it becomes prime real estate for E. coli and salmonella as well. The discount sticker doesn't kill any of that. All it really tells you is that the clock is ticking faster than usual. And what makes this so much worse is the economic reality wrapped around it. We now have an entire generation of yellow sticker hunters. people who deliberately go to supermarkets late, not for fun, but to stand a chance of feeding their families without blowing the budget. They plan their day around the markdown hour. They'll happily accept 75 and 90% off, take a victory photo for a budgeting group, then quietly try to stretch those packs a bit further in the fridge or load them into an already overstuffed freezer. Some turn the fridge down to save on energy, some leave the meat on the counter a little too long before cooking because the kitchen is cramped and chaotic. None of that shows up on a label, but every little shortcut chips away at the cold chain that food safety rules quietly assume you're maintaining at home. Stack those risks on top of each other and the picture changes. A tray of Tesco chicken, already high risk by definition as raw poultry, plus a yellow sticker right up against the use by, plus a long bus ride home without a cool bag, plus a rush defrost on the worktop, and a pan that's just a bit too crowded. That is not a bargain anymore. That is Russian roulette. You don't need a national scandal or a TV expose. All you need is one tired evening, one small kitchen, and one cheap tray of meat that never quite got as cold or as cooked as it should have. Most families have already seen the soft version of this story. A dodgy, cheap chicken curry, a night of cramps and running to the bathroom, maybe a GP appointment if it really knocks someone down. For older relatives, small children, or anyone with a weaker immune system, that same dodgy curry can be a genuine medical threat. And the cruel part is that the people taking the biggest risks are usually the ones with the least choice. If you don't chase the yellow stickers, the food bill becomes impossible. If you do, you're gambling with the health of the very people you're trying to protect. That's not irresponsibility. That's what happens when a food system tells you everything is safe as long as you cook it properly, while quietly ignoring the reality of crowded buses, faulty fridges, and sheer exhaustion. The only honest way out is not to pretend that all yellow sticker meat is evil, but to stop pretending the risk is the same as full-price, perfect chain meat. It means being ruthless about what you bring home late at night. Smaller amounts you can cook that day, freezing immediately instead of seeing how it smells tomorrow. Not stretching use-by dates just because the label still looks optimistic. It means demanding clearer guidance from supermarkets and regulators, not just cheerful phrases about fresh quality and farm assured. For me, not every tray with a Tesco logo is dangerous. The danger starts when high-risk meat meets desperate saving tactics and a system that shrugs and calls that choice. And that is not something I want sitting on my chopping board every night just to shave a few pounds off the receipt. Because if, in a world like this, even a reduced tray of fresh meat can turn into a coin toss, it leaves one final ugly question hanging in the air. In the supermarket aisle, what and who can we honestly still trust? 1. Tesco British chicken breast fillets. After 20 minutes of walking past ham, sausages, and ready-to-eat meat that all suddenly look a lot less innocent, the chilled aisle starts to feel like a minefield. Labels shout family favorite, great value, Wiltshire cured, ready to eat, and in your head, you're replaying every recall notice, every cancer warning, every hidden allergen. It feels like the whole system is stacked against anyone who just wants to feed their family without needing a degree in food science. And then, tucked between all the marinated kits and fancy deli slices, there's something almost boring. A plain tray of Tesco British chicken breast fillets. No glowing sauce, no tikka, no glossy photo, of a fake perfect stir-fry. Just pale raw chicken breast, a simple ingredients list that only says chicken, and a small note that it's suitable for freezing. Compared to the circus around it, it looks almost too simple to be worth filming. But this is exactly why it belongs in the "too safer meats to eat" part of the title. There's no nitrite here, keeping the meat suspiciously pink, no smoked flavor, no mystery, seasoning blend, and certainly no hidden egg or mustard in a sachet. Nutritionally, it's about as clean as supermarket meat gets, low in fat and saturates barely any salt, no added sugar. The risk is not coming from some chemical buried in the small print. The risk is simply this: it's raw chicken, and it has to be handled with respect. And that's the one thing you can still control. FSA and NHS advice is brutally clear. Don't wash chicken, keep it cold, keep it separate, cook it all the way through. If you do that, you've already removed most of the danger. In a world where so many problems come from what the factory did before the food ever reached you, curing, smoking, slicing, mislabeling, there is something almost empowering about choosing a product where the safety line is drawn in your own kitchen, not in a boardroom. When you read through customer comments, you can feel that tension. Some people praise the fillets as good quality and love batch cooking wraps, salads and casseroles from one pack. Others complain that a few trays have turned out rubbery or a bit woody, and that inconsistency makes them nervous. They are not asking for perfection. They're asking not to feel like test subjects every time a supermarket quietly changes supplier to save a few pence. So this isn't about saying chicken breast is magical or risk-free. It's about saying, in a cost of living crisis, if you're going to spend your limited money on meat, spend it on something minimally processed that lets you keep the power in your own hands. A plain tray of British chicken breast you season yourself, cook yourself, and portion into the freezer yourself is never going to be as exciting as a neon orange stir-fry kit. But if there's one thing this video makes clear, it's that boring and under your control is exactly the kind of safe that more British kitchens need. 2. Tesco lean beef steak mince, 5% fat. By the time you reach the red meat section, it's very easy to feel defeated. You've just heard that ham slices aren't as harmless as they look. Sausages carry a heart tax. Cooked meats can carry date mistakes and hidden allergens. The quiet message running through all of it is, if you care about your health, maybe you should give up meat altogether. But for a lot of families in the UK, that doesn't feel realistic. People still want a cottage pie on a cold night, a spaghetti bolognese that tastes like their childhood, burgers on the grill when the weather finally behaves. That is exactly where something as unglamorous as Tesco lean beef steak mince 5% fat comes in. On the shelf, it doesn't shout. No smoky glaze, no flame-grilled flavor, no pictures of perfect burgers dripping with orange cheese. Just a block of plain minced beef, 5% fat, with a short ingredients list that basically says beef. Nutrition-wise, it sits in a very different place from the processed meats we've just torn apart. Around 5% fat with lower saturates and salt than pre-made burgers or mystery sausages. It's not pretending to be a health food, but it's also not quietly hiding nitrites, curing agents, or a salt load that eats half your daily allowance before you've added chips. More importantly, it doesn't meet the classic definition of processed meat as long as nothing has been added. It's been minced, not cured, not smoked, not pumped full of preservatives. The risks you're managing with mince are simpler and more honest. Bacteria, if it's not kept cold, undercooking if you rush, cross-contamination if you're careless. All of those are real, but they are also things you can see and control in your own kitchen. You decide how much salt goes into the pan. You decide whether that burger is still pink in the middle or properly cooked through. You decide whether the pack gets frozen today or left to see how it smells tomorrow. And in a cost of living crisis, the flexibility matters. One pack of lean mince can become pasta sauce, chili, meatballs, stuffed peppers, cottage pie. You can split it into portions, freeze them flat, and know there is always the base of a cooked-from-scratch meal waiting, instead of living off whatever processed slice was on promotion that week. When you read how shoppers talk about it, that's the theme. They are bulk cooking, portioning, freezing, doing everything they can to stretch money without surrendering completely to ultra-processed shortcuts. So when this video says 5 meats to avoid at Tesco and 2 safer ones to eat, this is what safer really means. Not perfect, not magic, just meat that keeps the chemistry simple and the decisions in your hands. Lean beef mince 5% fat will never be sold with a halo over it, but compared to the cured, colored, ready-made products around it, it's one of the few options where you, not the factory, choose how salty, how fatty, and how risky tonight's dinner is going to be. We've just torn through 5 Tesco meats that prove one uncomfortable truth. Words like fresh, 100% British, and high welfare don't automatically mean that product is on your side. In 2025, people in the UK aren't just fighting energy bills and rent. They're also dodging hidden salt in cheap sausages, nitrite in pretty ham, wrong use-by dates, undeclared allergens in sauces, and bacteria on yellow sticker trays. That's exactly why the 2 safer options in this video are so boring. Plain chicken breast and lean beef mince you cook yourself. No one is perfect. Most of us have bought something on this list without thinking twice. What matters is what you do after you know. So tell me, which of these 5 meats shocked you the most? And did any of them sneak into your weekly shop? Drop a comment with other meats or ready meals you want investigated next, and subscribe so you don't miss the next label we rip apart on the very shelves you walk past every week.